All right, get ready because today we're going to jump into a world that, might sound a bit dry, right? Corporate actions in finance,
Yes.
but stick with us. This is more interesting and impactful than you might think.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's costing businesses a ton of money.
Yeah, it's a really big problem. We're talking about uh, inefficiencies that cost regional businesses something like, what, $3 to $5 million every year?
Whoa, okay, $3 to $5 million. That's not chump change.
No.
But help us out here for a second. What are corporate actions and why should we care, us everyday investors?
Right. Well, think of corporate actions as like any event that, significantly changes a company and it affects its stakeholders, including investors, right? So things like dividend announcements, stock splits, even mergers.
Mm.
The problem is that right now, critical information about these events is often like trapped in these like dense PDFs and press releases.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's just a mess that's just waiting for errors to happen.
I see. I see. Okay, so I'm starting to see why this matters.
hmm
So walk me through this. Let's say a company announces a dividend. What happens next?
Okay, so imagine a big tech company, announces a juicy dividend.
Yeah.
They send it a press release
Hmm.
with all the details, the amount, the record date, the payment date, etc.
Right.
Seems straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But then that information has to go through this complex chain
Uh-huh.
of intermediaries, custodians, brokers, fund managers,
Right.
before it reaches you, the investor.
Mm-hmm.
And at every step of the way, there's a chance for things to go wrong.
Yeah.
Data gets re-entered, formats change, and sometimes things get lost.
It's like a high-stakes game of telephone where the message can get distorted along the way.
Exactly.
And this is where our deep dive gets really interesting because the sources that we're looking at today point to a potential solution using some really cutting-edge technology. AI, blockchain, and something called a unified golden record.
Unified golden record. It's like having a single, universally trusted source of information for each corporate action.
Right.
No more multiple versions of the truth, no more discrepancies, just one clear, accurate record that everyone can access and rely on.
Okay, I like where this is going, but how on earth are they going to get everyone in the financial world to agree on this? It almost seems impossible.
It's a valid concern, but think about the shipping industry. Before standardized shipping containers, global trade was a chaotic mess.
Yeah, that's true.
Once everyone agreed on a common format, boom,
Yeah.
things became incredibly efficient.
Right.
This project could do the same thing for finance.
Okay, so how does it actually work? Where does the AI come in?
Okay, remember those PDFs and press releases we talked about?
Yeah.
That's where the AI comes in.
Yep.
We're talking about powerful AI models, and specifically large language models, or LLMs,
Okay.
that can analyze these documents and extract the key information and transform it into a structured, machine-readable format.
LLMs.
Yeah.
Like ChatGPT. So these AI models are basically reading and understanding these complex financial documents.
Exactly.
That's pretty wild.
It is pretty amazing. And what's really fascinating is these AI models not only extract the data, but they actually format it according to industry standards like ISO 2022.
Okay.
Think of these standards as like a universal language for finance,
Okay.
right? It ensures that everyone is interpreting the information in the same way.
Okay, that makes sense. But AI isn't perfect.
Right.
What happens if it makes a mistake? Especially when we're talking about something as important as my dividend payments.
You're right to be cautious, but that's where the system gets even more clever.
Okay.
They actually use multiple AI models, each trained on slightly different data sets,
Uh-huh.
and these models cross-check each other's work.
Oh, so it's like a panel of experts, but AI experts.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, and then what?
Now, if all the AI models agree, then the data is considered very reliable and automatically recorded on the blockchain. But if there's a discrepancy, then it's flagged for a manual review by a human expert.
Okay, so there's like a built-in safety net.
Exactly.
Even if one AI misses something, the others are there to catch it.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all making sense, but I remember reading about a case where the AI models didn't agree. Something about a Vodafone dividend? What happened there?
Yeah, the Vodafone case is a great example of why this multi-AI approach is so important.
Mm-hmm.
The models were given a super complex 51-page earnings report to analyze.
Oh, wow.
And while they struggled, it turned out that they weren't quite ready to handle that level of complexity at that stage of the project.
51 pages, no wonder.
Yeah,
So what does this mean for the future?
it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
They're working on training the AI models on more and more complex documents
Right.
and using more advanced models to tackle these trickier situations.
So they're constantly learning and improving.
Exactly.
Okay, good to hear. So we've talked about the AI extracting data
Right.
and the blockchain being this secure record keeper. But what about Chainlink? Our source material mentions Chainlink, a decentralized Oracle network, as a key part of this system.
Okay.
What's an Oracle network, and why is it needed here?
Okay, so think of an Oracle network as like a secure bridge between the real world and the blockchain.
Okay.
In this case, Chainlink acts as a reliable messenger, right? Securely delivering that validated corporate actions data from the AI models onto different blockchains.
Okay.
And because it's decentralized, there's no single point of failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's very robust and very resistant to manipulation.
Gotcha.
And that's critical when we're talking about sensitive financial information.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. We have the AI extracting the data, multiple AIs fact-checking each other, humans providing oversight,
Right.
and Chainlink making sure that data makes it to the blockchain.
Yep.
It's like a high-tech relay race for financial information.
Yeah.
But how does all of this actually benefit me as an everyday investor?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And it has a very exciting answer, because this system has the potential to make your life as an investor much easier, more efficient, and more secure.
Okay, well, tell me more. I'm listening.
First off, it dramatically reduces the chances of errors. Remember that game of telephone analogy?
Yeah.
With a unified golden record, everyone's working from the same verified information,
Right.
which means you can be more confident that you're getting accurate information about your assets.
So no more worrying about whether or not I'm going to get my dividend payments.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Secondly, it speeds things up significantly. Automating all those manual processes means faster transaction times.
Right.
No more waiting weeks for something to be processed.
Awesome.
And lastly, it increases transparency like never before.
Okay.
You have this clear and auditable record of every corporate action, so you know exactly what's happening with your investments.
Okay, this all sounds pretty fantastic,
It is.
but I'm guessing it probably comes with a pretty hefty price tag.
Well, the initial development costs are being shared by a group of companies behind the project,
Okay.
which includes some big names like Euroclear, Swift, and some major asset management firms and banks.
Gotcha.
They're basically investing in the future of finance because they see the potential of this system.
They're betting big.
They are.
But beyond just the initial investment, are there any costs associated with maintaining it? Who's going to keep the lights on, so to speak?
That's the beauty of blockchain technology.
Okay.
Once
good.
it's up and running, the cost of maintaining it is surprisingly low compared to traditional systems.
Okay.
We're getting rid of so many manual processes and intermediaries, which translates into massive cost savings in the long run.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
It really is.
More efficient, more secure, and cheaper in the long run.
Yep.
But I have a feeling that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, absolutely.
What's next for this ambitious project?
Well, this is just the beginning. They started by focusing on mandatory corporate actions
Okay.
for equities and fixed income assets across 6 European countries. But the plan is to expand to include more complex corporate actions,
Right.
additional asset classes,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually go global.
Oh.
Imagine a world where this level of efficiency and transparency is the norm for all financial transactions.
Now that's a future I can get behind.
Right.
But let's be real, there are going to be some challenges along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, what are some of those?
Well, there's always technical challenges.
Yeah.
There will be regulatory hurdles,
Right.
but they've got a very impressive team of experts from a variety of fields,
Okay.
and they seem to be tackling these challenges head on.
Good.
I, for one, am very excited to see how this unfolds in the years to come.
Me too.
Yeah.
This has been so insightful. I'm starting to see why this seemingly mundane area of finance is actually really important to unlocking a more efficient and transparent financial system for all.
Absolutely.
That's something we can all get behind.
We can. It's really been a fascinating discussion, and what's really exciting is how this project could really kind of ripple out and impact the entire financial landscape.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if this is successful, it could be the thing that finally brings blockchain technology into the mainstream.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's a real world demo of how blockchain can actually solve these, tangible problems.
Mm-hmm.
And not just in finance. I mean, the applications are pretty much limitless.
Exactly. And what's really remarkable to me is the collaborative spirit behind this innovation.
Mm.
We're talking about these major players from finance, tech, even regulatory bodies,
Right.
all working together to create something really groundbreaking.
It's like they've assembled, an Avengers-style team of
I
innovators.
like that.
And it couldn't come at a better time. The financial world is really hungry for change. People are demanding more efficient, more transparent, and more trustworthy systems.
And this project really hits all three, right? It's efficient because it automates so much of the heavy lifting involved in corporate actions.
Yeah.
It's transparent because everything is recorded on the blockchain for anyone to see.
Right.
And it's trustworthy because it's built on these multiple layers of validation and security.
So they've taken the best of both worlds. They've got the stability of traditional finance
Yeah.
and the innovation of blockchain, and they've kind of woven them together to create something really unique.
It's like a custom-tailored suit for the future of finance.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that it's not like this rigid one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It can be adapted and customized to fit the specific needs of different markets and different industries.
It's a flexible framework that can evolve as needed.
Exactly. And that's really what makes this project so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about solving a problem today.
Right.
It's about building the foundation for a wave of future innovation.
Yeah, I love that. Thinking big. But let's get back to the investor's perspective for a minute.
Okay?
We talked about all the potential benefits. Are there any potential downsides or risks that we should be aware of?
That's a really good question and one that deserves some careful thought.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one potential challenge is cybersecurity.
Right.
Any system that's connected to the internet is vulnerable to cyber attacks.
Yeah.
And a system that's handling this sensitive financial data is a very attractive target for hackers.
Okay, so what steps are they taking to mitigate those risks? We don't want hackers running off with our dividend checks.
No, we don't.
Well,
They're very aware of the risks.
yeah.
And they're taking a very comprehensive approach to cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking things like advanced encryption, multi-factor authentication, regular security audits,
Okay.
and of course, the decentralized nature of blockchain itself adds another layer of security.
Right.
It's much harder to hack into a decentralized system because there's no single point of failure.
Okay, that's reassuring. They're taking security seriously.
Yeah.
But beyond cybersecurity, what about the regulatory landscape? Blockchain technology is still pretty new, and the regulations are constantly evolving.
Sure.
Could that pose a challenge for this project?
It's true that the regulatory landscape is still evolving, but the team behind this project is working closely with regulators
Okay, good.
to make sure they're compliant every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
They're actively involved in discussions, and they're actually trying to shape regulations that both foster innovation while also protecting investors.
So they're not just building this cool technology.
Right.
They're actually helping to build the regulatory framework that will govern it.
Exactly.
That's great.
It's a very responsible approach.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the AI side of things.
Okay.
We talked about how they're using multiple AIs to cross-check each other's work,
Yeah.
which is brilliant.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, are humans completely out of the loop?
Not at all.
Yeah.
While the goal is to automate as much as possible for efficiencies, humans are still a really important part of the system. They're involved in training and fine-tuning those AI models.
Mm-hmm.
They're monitoring the system for any red flags.
Right.
And they're the ones who step in to do that manual review when there are those discrepancies.
So it's not about, humans versus machines. It's about humans and machines working together.
Exactly.
Each playing to their strengths.
Exactly. It's about leveraging AI to handle those repetitive data-heavy tasks.
Yeah.
While freeing up humans to focus on the more strategic and complex issues.
Right. Analysis, problem solving, risk management.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about eliminating jobs. It's about transforming them.
Precisely. It's about upskilling and empowering people to work alongside AI and creating this more efficient and intelligent system.
Okay, that's a much more positive way to look at it.
It is.
But let's talk about timelines for a second.
Yeah.
Our sources say that the project is still in its initial phase.
Mm-hmm.
So what have they actually achieved so far, and what are the next steps?
Well, they've successfully built and tested a system that handles mandatory corporate actions for equities and fixed income assets in 6 European countries.
Okay, so they're starting small.
Right. They've proven that the concept works.
Yeah, and then expanding from there.
Exactly.
What challenges do they see on the horizon as they scale up?
Well, integration is a big one.
Yeah.
Most financial institutions still rely on those older legacy systems.
Right.
That just don't play nice with blockchain technology.
Right. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're working on integrating the system with SWIFT,
Okay.
which is the global messaging network that connects thousands of financial institutions all over the world.
Yeah.
It's a huge undertaking, but if they can pull it off, it'll be a game changer for adoption.
Yeah, Swift is like the, central nervous system of the global financial world.
Exactly.
So getting this system to talk to Swift would be a monumental achievement.
It would.
What other big goals are on the roadmap?
Well, they're looking to expand the types of corporate actions that the system can handle.
Right.
Right now, they're focused on those mandatory events like dividends and stock splits.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is to include more complex actions, like mergers and acquisitions,
Okay.
and even voluntary corporate actions, where investors have a choice about whether to participate.
So they want to make the system more comprehensive.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And they're also looking at ways to make the system more resilient and more adaptable.
Right.
This is a system that has to handle this mission-critical financial data.
Yeah.
So it needs to be incredibly reliable, and it has to be able to evolve as the landscape of finance changes.
So they're building a financial system for the future that can really handle anything that comes its way.
Exactly.
Let's get back to basics, though. How do they actually plan to measure the success of this project? What metrics are they tracking?
Well, they're focusing on a few key areas: accuracy, speed, cost savings, and of course, adoption rates.
Okay.
So they're measuring things like how accurately those AI models are extracting that data,
Mm-hmm.
how quickly those transactions are being processed,
Yeah.
how much money is saved compared to those traditional processes,
Right.
and how many financial institutions are actually using the system.
Okay, so it's not just about building the cool technology, it's about proving that it works and that it's delivering some tangible benefits.
Exactly.
That's a data-driven approach I can get behind.
Absolutely.
It's the kind of transparency and accountability that we need more of in the financial world.
We do.
Yeah.
But even with all these metrics, it might be tricky to actually measure the impact on individual investors.
Right. How are they planning to do that?
That's a good question. They're actually exploring different ways to kind of gauge investor sentiment and satisfaction.
Okay.
So we're talking things like surveys, focus groups,
Right.
and they're tracking those key metrics like, the time it takes to receive your dividends
Mm-hmm.
or process a stock split.
So they really want to understand the impact from the investor's perspective.
It's
It's
sort
not
of-
just about the big picture. It's about making sure this actually makes a positive difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. They're taking that holistic approach, and they're recognizing that, technology is only as good as its ability to actually serve the needs of real people.
Well, this has been incredibly informative, and we've explored the challenges, the potential benefits, the tech details, the human element of this project.
It's been great.
It's clear they're taking a very thoughtful and comprehensive approach to building a system that could be truly transformative.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is this is just the beginning. The potential applications of this technology extend far beyond just corporate actions.
Exactly.
Imagine a world where all financial data is managed with this level of efficiency and transparency.
Yeah, that's a world I want to live in.
Me too. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's get back to the task at hand.
Okay.
We've talked about AI extracting data, blockchain storing it, Chainlink delivering it securely.
Yeah.
But how does it actually all come together? How do these technologies actually work together to make sure that corporate actions data is accurate and reliable?
That's a great question. And that's really where the ingenuity comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's break down the process step by step.
Okay.
Okay, so it starts with those unstructured documents, right? The PDFs, the press releases.
Right.
The AI models come in and they analyze those documents. They extract that key information and they convert it into a format that's structured and that machines can read.
Okay, so the AI is doing that initial data extraction and formatting.
Exactly.
What happens next?
Then comes the validation process.
Okay.
Remember we talked about those multiple AI models earlier?
Yeah.
They all analyze the same document independently.
Okay.
And they extract that same information.
Got it.
But each model is trained on slightly different data sets.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring their own unique perspective to the table.
So it's like strength in numbers.
Exactly.
And if all the AI models come to the same conclusion, then we can be pretty confident that the data is accurate.
Right.
But what happens if they don't?
Well, that's when the human experts step in.
Okay.
Any discrepancies between those AI outputs
Mm-hmm.
trigger a manual review by a team of specialists.
Okay.
They look into the issue, they make any necessary corrections, and then that corrected data is added to the blockchain.
So humans are still a really important part of the process. They
Yeah.
provide that last layer of quality control.
Exactly. But once the data has been validated, either through that AI consensus or through human review,
Right.
Chainlink steps in, and it securely fetches that data and delivers it to the appropriate blockchain network.
Okay, so it's like having this trusted courier that's hand-delivering this valuable package.
Okay.
And because Chainlink is decentralized and tamper-proof, we know the data hasn't been changed or messed with along the way.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got AI extracting the data.
Yeah.
We've got multiple AIs double-checking each other.
Yeah.
Humans are providing that oversight. And then Chainlink is securely delivering that data to the blockchain.
It's like this well-orchestrated symphony of technology.
It really is.
I'm still curious, though, what does this actually look like on the blockchain? How is the data actually organized and stored?
Okay, so once that data is on the blockchain,
Yeah.
it's stored in a way that's structured and standardized, using those industry standards we mentioned earlier.
Right, like ISO 2022.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those standards act like a universal language for corporate actions data and make sure that every institution in that network can understand and process that information in the same way.
So it's like a universal translator for financial data.
Exactly.
And because it's all on the blockchain, it's publicly auditable.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone can go and see the data for themselves.
Precisely. That's one of the most powerful aspects of blockchain.
Right.
It provides this level of transparency and accountability that just isn't possible with traditional systems.
Mm.
We've gone from a world of these opaque PDFs and these siloed databases
Yeah.
to a world where financial data is open, it's accessible, and it's verifiable.
That's a huge change.
It is.
But what about the security of that data? We know blockchain is really secure, but are there any additional safeguards in place to protect this sensitive information?
Yeah, they've taken a layered approach to security.
Okay.
So on top of blockchain security, they're also using advanced encryption to protect that data, both when it's moving around and when it's being stored.
It's like having this digital Fort Knox for your corporate actions data.
Exactly. So it's not just about making the data open and accessible.
Right.
It's also about making sure it's protected from prying eyes or those malicious actors.
Okay, so it's a balancing act.
Exactly.
We've covered so much ground, and I'm starting to really understand how this system works. It's a very elegant solution to a pretty complex problem.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something that I saw in the source material, smart contracts. Can you explain what those are and how they're being used in this project?
Sure. Think of smart contracts as like self-executing agreements that live on the blockchain. So they automatically swing into action when certain predefined conditions are met.
So it's like a digital contract that enforces itself.
Exactly.
How are they using them in this project?
Well, they're using them to automate various parts of that corporate actions process.
Okay.
So, for example, you could have a smart contract that distributes dividends to shareholders automatically on a specific date, or executes a stock split based on some pre-agreed criteria.
It sounds like smart contracts are taking automation to a whole other level.
They really are.
They're getting rid of that manual intervention and reducing the risk of human error.
Exactly. And because those smart contracts are transparent and tamper-proof, you can be sure that they'll execute as intended without any human meddling or that risk of manipulation.
Okay, so we've got the AI extracting and validating the data, Chainlink delivering it securely to the blockchain, and smart contracts are actually automating those corporate actions.
Exactly. It's like this well-oiled machine, all orchestrated by these really amazing cutting-edge technologies.
It really is. But I have one final question, and it might be a little bit provocative in all this talk about efficiency and automation. I can't help but wonder what happens to all the people who actually work in those corporate actions departments. Are their jobs at risk?
That's a very valid concern, and it's one that we need to address head on. I mean, as with any technological disruption, some jobs will inevitably be displaced. But it's important to remember that technology also creates new opportunities.
So it's not that jobs are disappearing, it's that they're changing.
Exactly. Instead of doing those repetitive manual tasks, people will have the chance to upskill and move into more strategic roles. They'll be able to leverage their expertise, analyze that data, identify trends, and ultimately make better decisions.
Okay, so it's a chance for people to move up that value chain.
Exactly. And it's really important for companies to invest in training and development to help their employees make that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about empowering people to embrace the future and not fear it.
I agree.
It's amazing to think about how this project could impact the entire financial industry. I mean, if this really takes off, this could be what pushes blockchain technology into the mainstream.
I completely agree. It's a real-world proving ground for blockchain.
Yeah.
It shows how it can be used to solve these really complicated problems, and not just in finance,
Right.
across all kinds of industries.
That's like a, shining a light on what's possible when you combine, cutting edge tech with people working together.
Hmm.
And the timing couldn't be better. I mean, people are really looking for more transparency and more efficiency in finance.
Absolutely. And, this project is a perfect response to that demand. It's like they took the best parts of traditional finance,
Right.
that stability and experience,
Mm-hmm.
and they combined it with the innovation of blockchain.
Yeah.
And the result is a system that's faster, cheaper, more transparent, and ultimately more trustworthy.
It's like they created a hybrid car, but for finance.
Yeah, I like that.
They took the best of both worlds and combined them into something really special.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room here for a sec. Liability.
Yeah.
In a system that relies so much on AI and automation, who's responsible if something goes wrong?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's one that everyone in the industry is talking about.
Yeah.
Like with any new technology, there are these legal and regulatory gray areas that still need to be figured out.
So we're kind of in uncharted territory here.
In some ways, yes. But the good news is that the industry is taking this really seriously.
Okay.
There's a lot of discussion going on about algorithmic accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what that means is setting some ground rules for how AI systems should be developed and used
Right.
to make sure that they're fair and transparent and accountable.
So it's about holding the AI to the same standards as we hold humans.
Exactly. And it's not just about the AI itself. It's about making it clear what the roles and responsibilities are for the humans that are actually building and managing these systems.
Right.
We need a framework that protects both the individual and the system as a whole.
Yeah, it sounds complicated.
It is.
But I'm glad that they're working on it. And it really feels like collaboration is going to be key here.
Yeah.
Bringing together all these experts from law and technology and ethics.
Absolutely. Open dialogue and cooperation are really essential here.
Yeah.
We need to create a system that allows for innovation, but also protects us from any potential risks.
Speaking of risks, one thing that comes to mind for me is data privacy. We're dealing with really sensitive financial information here.
Sure.
How does this system make sure that our data is protected?
That's a great question and a really important one. And they've put multiple layers of protection in place.
Okay.
First of all, blockchain technology itself is very secure.
Right.
The fact that the ledger is decentralized makes it really hard for hackers to get in and change the data.
So it's like having a bunch of security guards all protecting it from different angles.
That's a great way to think about it.
But they're not relying on blockchain alone, right?
Why? No, they're not. They're also using some very sophisticated encryption methods to protect the data, both when it's being transmitted and when it's being stored.
So it's like putting your financial information in a safe that's protected by multiple locks.
Exactly. It's not just about making the data open and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making sure that it's protected
Right.
from people who shouldn't have access to it.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah,
So they're taking data privacy very seriously.
they are.
Security is only one part of it, though. What about accuracy? How can we be sure that the information that ends up on the blockchain is actually correct? We've talked about the AI validation process, but is there still a chance for human error?
Of course, human error is always a possibility, but this system has been designed to really minimize that risk.
Yeah.
Remember, we have multiple AIs that are checking each other's work,
Right.
and any discrepancies are flagged for review by human experts.
Yeah.
It's a system of checks and balances that's designed to catch any errors before they become a real problem.
So it's like having a whole team of accountants going over every detail.
Exactly. And on top of that, the blockchain provides an immutable record of every single transaction.
Right.
So if there's ever a dispute, you can very easily trace that information back to its source and make sure that it's correct.
That level of transparency and accountability, I think, is something that we could really use in a lot of areas of life.
I agree.
Not just in finance.
Yeah.
But this is just the start, right? What's next? What are they looking at down the road?
Well, their roadmap is really ambitious.
Okay.
They're planning to expand the system to handle more complex corporate actions.
Build what?
Things like mergers and acquisitions,
Okay.
and eventually moving beyond just equities and fixed income into other asset classes as well.
Okay.
And of course, the ultimate goal is to see it adopted globally.
So this could become the new standard for how corporate actions are processed all over the world.
That's the dream.
Wow.
They want to build a system that can completely change the way that financial markets work. making them more efficient, more transparent, and accessible for everyone.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has?
We dove deep into a world that a lot of people probably think is pretty boring.
Yeah.
But, it turns out to be fascinating.
It is.
And it's really the key to unlocking this more efficient and trustworthy financial system for everyone.
It's a good reminder that innovation can come from the most unexpected places.
Yeah.
And it's a real testament to what we can achieve when we put our heads together and work together.
This project is such a good example of how technology can be used to make a real difference.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful reminder that the future of finance isn't about replacing humans with machines.
Right?
It's about finding ways for us to work together and use our strengths to build something better.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into the world of corporate actions.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.